Mary Sue's, the toxic person's idea of a good person. A Mary Sue is a character that is perfect, powerful, loved by everyone, and always written terribly. In this story, a Mary Sue and OP butt heads, and in the end, one of them storms out of the group. But first, today's sponsor is the Tomb Guardians with their new Kickstarter, Curse of the Usurper. It is the largest D&D adventure ever written, with over 1,000 pages spanning 3 parts, taking your characters from level 1 to 15. Shop in over 20 fleshed out stores, engage in tentacle arm wrestling in the Sunken Dream Tavern, fight opponents in Morven's Sorrow Pit, puzzle your way through Azkel's Tower, and much, much more. Surprise your players with over 50 minis and over 400 printable dungeon tiles. Manage your game easily with more than 60 maps and stat cards detailing various new spells and diseases, over 50 items, and over 100 unique monsters and NPCs. Scan the QR codes found throughout the book to listen to descriptions and music tracks specific to the campaign setting and adventures. Play online, included for free with every pledge, is a shard virtual tabletop version of the Curse of the Usurper to be played online. Link in the description, see you there. Roll post. I used to play and co-DM in a West Marches style shared campaign where I met possibly my least favorite player ever. I personally dislike the term Mary Sue, but I don't know how else to describe her character, and that's what I'm going to call her in this story. Mary Sue was a Protector Aasimar life cleric who grew up quite sheltered in a noble and devout family. If I remember correctly, at some point in her backstory, she was kidnapped, no idea how she was saved, and she literally had in her character sheet that she was generally beloved because she was so nice. She was a nightmare to deal with. Mary Sue only did things that made her look good. At least once per session, she mentioned that she had spent her downtime caring for the orphans of the city. When it was necessary to take a more morally gray course of action, she just took a step back, didn't say a word, let the others do the work, and then, once everything was done, complained because it wasn't what a good cleric should have done. I'm sorry, but what? You're not a good person because you avoid making difficult choices. It's okay to make a character that's benevolent and powerful, like Superman, but you risk your character being boring. The way to remedy this is by creating situations where being good or being powerful don't help you. If you're a DM struggling with a character that's maybe too much of a goody two-shoes, I recommend setting up a moral dilemma that they can't muscle through, like the trolley problem. In case you don't know what that is, a trolley's about to run over 2 people. You can divert the track and save them, but then it will run over one other person. Do you allow 2 people to die, or do you divert the trolley, directly killing someone who would not have died otherwise? It's a test. Do you think 2 lives are inherently more valuable than 1? If so, do you believe that enough to directly cause someone's early death? As a DM, you can implement this exact scenario in much more creative ways. Tests that challenge a character's values. I like including them in my campaigns as they're fun, rich in roleplay, and give the characters something to do to develop their characters outside of combat. Anyways, roll post. Mary Sue, despite wearing medium armor and usually being one of the highest level characters in the sessions she played, always used other characters, including the squishy full casters, as meat shields, always hiding behind them. Then she acted all saintly when she healed them. Mary Sue had suspiciously high stats in a campaign with the standard point-buy system. When it was pointed out, the player threw the co-DM who helped set up her character sheet under the bus, saying that he accidentally gave her 2 extra points. Considering how often she conveniently misremembered rules when it suited her, I'm not particularly inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt. I also strongly suspect that Mary Sue either neglected to mark off used spell slots or regained them with short rests. But I was never able to prove it, and almost none of the other co-DMs cared to investigate. Mary Sue only answered to praise, and straight up refused to interact with anyone who did not suck up to her. Literally, if you tried to move even the gentlest of criticism against Mary Sue, the player would just say something rude out of character in the chat, and then say, Mary Sue doesn't reply to that. So, now that you've met the character, here's the horror story which, ironically, takes place in a haunted house themed session. It's sad but also funny that it's always the people that constantly harp on positivity that are actually really toxic. Mary Sues are what good people look like to someone who does not know what it actually means to be a good person. Like somebody who never makes a mistake, is all-powerful and loved by everyone. But good people are more than that. Good people can be weak, unlikable, make lots of mistakes big and small. All I'm saying is, even the edgelords have a better understanding of what it means to be a good person. And if the edgelords are more in touch with reality than you're in big trouble. The party gets to this random haunted house, which we explore for a while, getting attacked multiple times by various undead. At some point we decide to leave, as most of us were not in the best shape, the exception, of course, being Mary Sue, who stayed safe in the rear, right behind the warlock and the wizard. As we are just about to cross the exit, we're ambushed by even more undead. The rogue suggests that we don't fight and just escape instead. It requires a lot of strategy and some luck, but we manage to exit the house one by one. Everyone, except for Mary Sue. Granted, she was in the most inconvenient position and she found herself surrounded, but we were all suggesting to her, both in character and out, to just disengage and escape. We had noticed that the undead were not following us outside, so she could have easily escaped. It was even suggested that she tried to turn undead as a high-risk, high-reward move. Instead, with all of us already out, she decides that it was the best moment to use Radiant Soul and just stay there and try to pick off the undead one by one. We were baffled, to say the least. I think she was convinced that we would just run to help her because she was so beloved. Instead, we stayed safe, outside, trying to snipe at the best of our abilities, but she still went down in a couple of rounds, with the undead making her fail all of her saving throws. This is, unintentionally, a perfect moral conundrum to present a Mary Sue with, like we were talking about earlier. But the hilarious thing is, the Mary Sue from the story is so dumb, she caused her own moral dilemma that I'm about to use as an example. So, imagine this scenario. You are working with a total idiot, very unhelpful, puts himself first always, but he's still on the good guy's team, fighting the good fight. He acts against everyone's best judgment and opts for a high-risk maneuver, putting himself in danger. He goes down and will die if you don't help him. The odds of winning the battle are no longer in your favor, so do you risk your own life and the lives of your friends to save him, or was his life forfeit the moment he refused to follow your advice? Does it matter that he was a liability? Or is that besides the point, making any one life valuable enough to risk everyone else's? People who are paying close attention might have noticed that this is just a repackaged trolley problem with more context. But it's exactly moments like this that make D&D so interesting. Imagine the party infighting, the clashing of what they value, and where the heroes draw the self-sacrificial line in the sand. Anyways, it's very fun stuff to think about. A thing of note, most of the enemies in this house were shadows, meaning that she could have easily been permakilled, especially with her 8 in strength. But the DM was more merciful than she would have deserved and only had basically zombies kill her. In fact, one of the reasons why we decided to flee was that some of us simply couldn't risk being hit even just once by a shadow. We end the session there and she is fuming. I get being upset that your character was killed. Truly, I get it. But she's lashing out, saying that we let her die, calling us cowards, that it was unfair that she was attacked when she was already down. She also says that, if she will need a true resurrection, she expects all the player characters in the campaign to pitch in. Yes, even the level 20-ish characters that she never met or refused to speak to. Then she abruptly exited the call. For some reason, I truly don't understand. Most of the other co-DMs are incredibly forgiving, even though she had been openly hostile towards the DM and the other players. Well, her character just died, of course she's upset. And we all had at least one of our characters die at some point, some permanently, and this was the first time I witnessed a player behaving in such a toxic manner. And yet, it was let slide. Another session was played a few days later to recover Mary Sue's body, and even though it made no sense that she wasn't turned into an undead in the meantime, she was fine. I mean, she was dead, but in a way that could be fixed with a simple raise dead. It turned out that the DM wanted to do something more, but one of the main co-DMs, the one who basically managed Mary Sue, had asked him to go easy on her, so there is that. I didn't take part in that session, I had no interest in it. Not only I had plenty of reasons to dislike Mary Sue, both in and out of character, but my character was also largely blamed for the fact that we escaped, despite not being the one who suggested to run, because I managed to be the first out of the house. But I saw that the player lurked and left a ton of passive-aggressive messages on the Roll20 chat. In a couple of messages, she was incredibly disrespectful towards an NPC's self-deletion. She hanged herself like a said about the main undead of the house, whose self-deletion had something to do with the curse. And when one of the DMs told her to be more respectful around this sensitive topic, she replied, "I don't effing care." Not that she faced any consequences, of course. Mary Sue's body is recovered and one character dies during the session, and she's resurrected with a simple raise dead. I left the campaign not long after that, but I can only imagine that she is still terrible. Before anyone asks, I have no idea why she got preferential treatment. One of the reasons why I left that group was the blatant unfairness and the double standards, but it was usually the senior members and their friends that could get away with pretty much anything. And she was one of the newer guys, and I didn't know any of them prior to joining. To conclude this post, here are some of her out-of-character messages. "Cowards, all of you, you hear me?" Sent when she used Radiant Soul and started attacking with spiritual weapon, with us already out of the house. "Don't blame the undead child, blame the DM." Posted as soon as the session ended. And I saved this one for last as there is mention of SA, so if you're uncomfortable with that, you can click off the video now. Assuming you didn't, this is the most immature and childish message that she posted on the Roll20. When the undead made her fail her saving throws, she posted in the chat, "Sure, make them rape her while you're at it. Tear her to pieces, who effing cares?" I guess it just boils down to toxic environments rewarding toxicity, and that environment was pretty awful. Pretty awful is an understatement. This is just what would happen if a D&D player got bit by a radioactive narcissist. Good on OP for leaving though. Nothing good was gonna come out of that game. Lastly, something that I've noticed is that a West Marches game is just DMing on nightmare difficulty. Not only does the DM lose a lot of control as there are now other parties to consider, but if another DM messes up, it can echo and impact the entire game. I'm not a hater, I'm not saying that West Marches are impossible, and if there was an easy way to do it right, it would be my favorite thing. But it is so incredibly hard to do well that it would take a team of DMs that are all more skilled than I am. Anyways, sorry if my voice sounds bad today, allergies are kicking me down. I don't get that at all, by the way. My body just looks at a totally normal, innocent particle floating around in the air that nobody else seems to have a problem with, and says, absolutely not, let's overreact and get sick for days, yes! I don't understand it at all, but anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Till next time.